everyone. Today's story is move-a-length. During the New Year holiday, Warm Breeze is bringing everyone this pure love redemption masterpiece, rated a perfect score by millions. Now, let the story begin. I returned to my wife's high school days. This time, I made a completely different decision. I decided to be a bystander. I would witness her living a beautiful life of her own. Even if that beauty did not include my direct involvement, I would still accept it gladly. A crisp, lingering bell rang through every corner. The brief commotion on campus fell back into its original quiet. That is just how high school is. Those brief moments of relaxation vanish in an instant. The hallways of the teaching building gradually quieted down. The air was filled with a stillness that meant it was time to sink into knowledge. The students' hurried footsteps, or their low voices, were, in that moment, gently smoothed away by an invisible force. They gathered into a small stream flowing toward the classrooms. I sat in the corner of the back row. I stared straight at the girl coming back in from outside. Heh. Her name was Ningxi. Pretty name, right? I realized I was making that creepy grin again, without even noticing it. I immediately slapped my left cheek. She wore a light pair of glasses, and behind the lenses were eyes that looked a little tired. There was a faint darkness under her eyes. She had definitely stayed up late studying again last night. She was not especially noticeable among the crowd wearing the same school uniform. And yet this girl, hidden in the crowd, was the famous top female student in the grade. 3 straight years as top of the grade in science. She was my future wife. No, now that I'm back, she would become a rising new star in the aerospace field. Or a well-known professor in physics. Maybe even stand alongside Hawking in fame. But she would not be my wife. She would never be tied to a trash like me. A few people gradually took their seats. I gave her one last lingering look, then pulled my gaze back. I picked up the school uniform I had carelessly left on the desk and chair, and put it on properly. The homeroom teacher strode into the classroom. He was holding a stack of test papers. His expression was stern. Students, we are going to have a pop quiz. The homeroom teacher's emotionless voice broke the classroom's quiet. The students burst into an uproar at once. They grumbled for a couple of seconds, then numbly pulled out their paper and pens. My brow twitched. I couldn't stop worrying. Back in student days again. There was this one annoying habit. A quiz every 2 days. And a big exam every 3. After sighing inwardly, I closed the book, which was even paler than my face, and tossed it to my left, into the stack of books on the floor. I had finally dug out that textbook, only to realize I would not use it at all. Ningxi. Hearing the teacher call her name, Ningxi walked up to the podium as if it were perfectly normal. She took the stack of test papers from the homeroom teacher. After counting them, she handed them out one by one to the students in the first row. Then she patted the hem of her uniform and settled steadily back into her seat. Her back was straight. From the scrap paper placed on top of the books, she tore off a sheet and pressed it under her right hand. Everyone in the classroom looked more or less troubled. Only Ningxi and I were equally calm. It was just that I was not confident in my own ability. It was because I already knew my score. How could anyone expect a long-graduated, bottom-of-the-class student like me to write a test paper, especially a math test paper? Faint rustling spread through the classroom. Ningxi took the test paper passed back by the student in front of her. When the student in front said, "Top student," and asked, "Let me bask in your ethereal aura," she smiled faintly as she lifted her elbow. Her uniform sleeve slid down, revealing a stretch of fair arm. It was not until the rustling of the papers being passed around drew near that I finally realized I had once again been staring at Ningxi, lost in thought. I could not help but slap my right cheek again. The stinging pain forced me to tear my gaze away from Ningxi's back. I lifted my head and glanced at the progress, estimating that the paper would be reaching me soon. After calculating the timing, I extended the fingers beside the shoulder of the student in front of me. Looking at the burn mark on my index finger, I instinctively patted my pocket. Sure enough, I found a lighter and a few cigarettes. Sigh. In my last life, I did not learn a single useful thing at school, but I did pick up all kinds of bad habits. The rustling of the stacked test papers filled the room. Unexpectedly, the student in front turned around. He said quickly, "There are none left." Then he turned back and buried his head in his work. "No more. Well, damn. Perfect. Only an idiot would want to write this test paper." Before I could even enjoy it for long, I saw the old homeroom teacher casually glance my way. When he saw my desk was completely empty, his brow snapped into a deep frown. His already worried face looked even more stern. It made me want to go over and smooth those wrinkles out for him. But then I remembered the old homeroom teacher had made quite a bit of money from stocks over the years, and even walked around like he was floating. So I dropped the idea. Let him keep frowning. After all, in just a few years, there would be nothing left to make him worry anymore. I lifted the corner of my mouth and flashed him a bright, sunny college boy smile. But his brow only furrowed harder. He looked like he had seen a ghost. My smile fell, but then his expression snapped back to normal. In fact, he looked relieved. Come on, man. In my last life, I might not have liked studying, but I never did anything outrageous. At most, I had just snatched the grade's top student right out from under him. Thinking of that, I immediately deflated. I lowered my head and dropped my eyes. Ningxi, in this life, you will never have anything to do with a trash like me. I was wallowing in my own melancholy, licking my wounds alone, when something uninvited suddenly entered my field of vision. A glaring white test paper made my head ache. Following the finger pointing toward it, I happened to meet Ningxi's eyes, with not a trace of emotion in them. Right, this one. I will go get another one. Her high ponytail brushed the back of her neck, head bowed and eyes lowered. Her lashes hung like butterfly wings. My heart gave a jolt. My hand, which had been propping up my head, fell away without me meaning it to. At last, I remembered exactly what moment I had come back to. It was this very moment. It was the kindness Ningxi showed to any classmate, and that kindness had started the bond between us in my last life. In my last life, I took that test paper, then scribbled all over it at random. All I could think about was Ningxi's name. Later, Ningxi was dragged down by me, a good for-nothing piece of trash. Just as she was about to turn away, I suddenly stood up and made a decision completely different from the one I made in my last life. I shoved the test paper back into her hands. I accidentally brushed her palm. Damn it, so soft, just like in my last life. I shoved one hand into my pocket, avoiding Ningxi's stunned gaze, and lifted my eyes in challenge toward the old homeroom teacher. I cannot do it anyway, and I do not want to write it. After saying that with a carefree air, since I had made quite a scene, quite a few classmates buried in a sea of questions turned to sneak glances at me. My out-of-place presence among these honest, obedient good students somehow made me strangely attractive to them. So, even though my grades in my last life were terrible, I still won the admiration of quite a few shy teenage girls. There was nothing I could do. Innocent girls always find it easy to be drawn to bad students like me. Ningxi stood there stunned. She did not react right away. With those black-rimmed glasses on, she looked completely dazed. I give up. Absolutely adorable. I swallowed hard, afraid it would backfire. I tossed my head at once and strode out while the old homeroom teacher was still glaring and blowing his top. My grades are just bad, not my character. I may not study, but I still should not bother the other students. When I reached the door, I gave the old homeroom teacher a frank wave goodbye. Sigh. No wonder Ningxi ended up with me in my last life. With my charm, I threw my head back and laughed as I walked out. The old homeroom teacher watched me all the way. I first strolled around the grade director's office, then headed to the school gate. But before I could step out, the security guard stopped me. I looked down and realized I had forgotten I was still wearing my school uniform. I argued with him for ages, but no matter how I put it, he would not let me leave. That thing shaped like a tree branch still did not move away from my throat at all. No choice. I glanced at his yellowed fingers, then immediately pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and slowly held it to his mouth. Then, to his shocked stare, I let go at once, flinging it onto the desk in the security booth. A graceful arc flashed through the air and quickly set the newspaper on the desk alight. Yes, three-pointer. Just as the security guard grabbed the water cup beside him and easily put out the flames. When he looked up again, all he could see was my retreating back as I ran off. After running for a short while, I looked back at the school building standing among the many high-rises. I pressed my index and middle fingers together against my forehead and saluted my youth. Okay. The first step of the moon project was a success. An artist brushed soft colors across the sky. The shop doors opened quietly. Steam rose from the breakfast stall, filling the air with fragrance. The smell slipped into my nose, and my stomach cramped a little. Only then did I realize I had skipped breakfast. I searched through both my shirt and pants, and only managed to scrape together yuan and 50 cents. Damn, I really was broke. Forget it. The important thing came first. The skyscrapers stood tall and imposing. I had not been back in a long time, So for a moment I could not even find my bearings. I could not even remember where my old hovel was back then. It took quite a bit of effort to find the way from my hazy memories. The narrow alley was shaded by green trees, and the drooping branches of the old pagoda tree brushed gently against passers-by. That was it. This was the old residential complex. On the mottled walls, you could still see the scribbles from my childhood. I hurried upstairs and looked at the shabby wooden door. I took a deep breath and kicked it hard. With a bang, numbness and pain shot through my foot. Hiss. Ow. Damn it. That hurt like hell. I clutched my leg and winced for 2 seconds, then glared at the damn door, which was crumbling yet still had a deadbolt that held firm. Holy crap. How did I never know this busted door was so sturdy? Luckily, the noise had woken the old bastard inside. Listening to the rustling sounds inside, I clicked my tongue against my back teeth. The old bastard opened the door, and when he saw it was me, his hangover-ridden face showed obvious surprise. He squinted and glanced at the sky outside. "What are you back for?" he said with obvious disgust, then picked up the bottle in his right hand and took another swig. I glanced around the messy room, pushed him aside, and went straight to my room. It was messy in there too, but compared with the outside, it was practically tidy. I lifted the mattress and felt underneath it. Sure enough, it was empty. So the money from my last life had already been taken by him and spent by now. I gave a self-mocking laugh. The moment I let go, the thin mattress sprang back, dust hidden on the bedboard puffed up. "You little punk, thinking you could hide money at home and keep it from me." The old bastard slumped on the sofa, shoving the clothes that were in the way onto the floor. He swayed the bottle smugly, and that flushed, drunken face made me sick. My fingers slowly curled in, until the pain in my palm stabbed deep into my bones. Only then did I realize I had already walked right up to him. "Get the hell out of here." The old bastard had not even finished speaking when I clamped a tight grip on his chin. I squeezed so hard he had no choice but to open his mouth. His face froze in shock. Before his foul words could come out, I did not hesitate. I snatched the bottle from his hand, rough and brutal. The liquid inside foamed from the violent shaking. As the bottle tilted, amber liquid gushed out, ruthlessly forcing itself into his mouth. The old bastard's eyes bulged. A muffled wheeze came from his throat. He tried to struggle, but he had no strength to fight back. Ever since I was young, I had been stronger than him for years. "Where's the money? The money you took from me?" I barked at him. I let go so he could breathe. "You piece of trash. You dare treat your own father like this?" The old bastard lurched up in fury, raising a hand to smack my face. But because of the liquor, his footing became unsteady. He stumbled and hit the ground. The sticky liquid on his hands and the harsh stench of cheap liquor made my stomach turn even more. I could not be bothered wasting words on a useless old ghost. I strode forward, grabbed his hair, and forced the rest of the liquor down his throat. It spilled from the corners of his mouth, dripping from his chin, leaving mottled stains on his collar. Only then did the old bastard realize just how badly outmatched he was. His instinct to survive overwhelmed whatever was left of his drunken rage. His nails left a few scratches on my arm. Through the old bastard's bloodshot eyes, I saw myself there, unnervingly calm and utterly insane. I lowered my head, forcing him to meet my gaze. My voice was cold beyond words. "I asked you, where is the money?" The old bastard stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. When my grip tightened, he finally came to his senses. His hand instinctively groped inside his clothes. I let go of his hair and yanked open his shirt. At last, I found a few red bills. Just a scattered handful. I glanced at the bottles scattered on the floor, and a familiar helplessness suddenly surged in my chest. It was my 18-year-old self crying out, because by then, I had long since gone numb to it. Even after Xi and Ningxi, and I got married later on. When this old bastard shamelessly wanted to come, I still turned him down. Other people did not understand, but I knew exactly what he was really after. That old scoundrel just wanted to come collect the gift money. I stood and looked down at him, the old bastard coughing, fingers in his hair, then did not stay a second longer. I stormed out, leaving him to curse behind me. After jogging all the way, I watched the street scenery grow more and more familiar, and my heart gradually settled, especially when I could still faintly see the outline of the moon in the sky. I tilted my head back and stared at the sky for a long while. I did not expect that. The moment I came to, a black shape slammed me to the ground. Holy hell. Security, uncle. What are you doing here instead of guarding the gate? The old man did not answer. He just locked me in a tight hold. A bad feeling rose in my chest at once. I looked to the side, and sure enough, there was the old homeroom teacher, his face dark as ash. Beside him stood someone who looked vaguely familiar. It was not until they dragged me back to the school office that I finally remembered who he was. My grade director. It had been far too long since I last saw him. Yiqiang, why you are just... Oh dear. The grade director was so furious he could barely speak. He pointed at me, speechless for a long moment. After so many years, hearing that name again made me feel a little dazed. That old bastard always called me a piece of trash. It was not until the day I was registered in the household records, and he still had not sobered up, all groggy and muddled, that the staff could not stand it anymore, and gave me this name. So, after Jia and Ningxi, then I got together in my last life. I shamelessly asked her to come up with a new name for me. She was a top student, and sharp as a tack, and the name she spent days thinking up was naturally excellent. As for the name Yiqiang, I had long since thrown it to the back of my mind. I sat in front of them, silently enduring this three-way interrogation, watching the grade director's lips open and close over and over. I gradually started to get sleepy. My eyelids started to twitch. I yawned in silence. What a boring day. I grinned at the old homeroom teacher, whose nostrils were flaring wide open, but to my surprise, his eyes widened even more. It felt like he was about to slap my face the next second. I did not know how long passed, but seeing that I was completely unmoved, the well-meaning grade director sighed and took a weary sip of water. The time was about right. I stood up from my seat, smoothed out the sheet of paper they had thrown in front of me again, and placed it back on the office desk. Director, I am dropping out. The moment I said that, the grade director's eyelids shot up, and he glared at me so hard steam seemed ready to pour from his ears. The mug in his hand, engraved with the words "outstanding individual," rattled in his grip. Yiqiang. His voice turned sharp at once. I nodded and said, I'm here. Dropping out requires a parent's signature. You can't just grab a scrap of paper and write the words "drop out" on it in big letters. I nodded as if I understood, though I only half did. Under the baffled stares of the grade director and the old homeroom teacher, I picked up a pen and wrote the old bastard's full name in sweeping strokes. Then I pushed it toward them. The two of them fell silent for a moment. Then their breathing grew heavier. I have no mother. My father is a deadbeat. He doesn't care about me. The moment I said that, their expressions changed at once. The grade director's pursed lips softened at once. If you do not keep studying, what will you do in the future? Start a business. I already know my direction. They spent a lot more breath trying to talk me around, though this time their words were much kinder than before. But I still let it go in one ear and out the other. Just as we reached a deadlock, I stepped back half a pace, snatched the dropout form from the grade director's hand, and under the pitying gazes of the two of them, I suddenly remembered something. With a sly grin, I slid and dropped to the floor at the feet of all three of them. Director, old homeroom teacher, please, lend me some money. Please. That is why they are the educated type. They had never met anyone as shameless as me. Under the force of my silver tongue, at last, I was holding a small stack of red bills. I happily walked toward the school gate. I waved at the scrap collector, gesturing for him to wait outside. Then, under the security uncle's wary gaze, I strolled back to the classroom without a care in the world. The pop quiz had long since ended. Everyone was complaining about the questions all at once. When they noticed me coming, there was a brief silence, and someone kindly asked where I had gone. I just gave a casual shrug and did not answer him for the moment. I went back to my seat, took off my school jacket, and wrapped as many books from my desk as I could inside it. For the ones that simply would not fit, I picked through them and picked out a few clean ones and tossed the ones untouched by pen or ink onto the desktop. Yiqiang, what are you doing? The person in front of me suddenly asked. Their voice was full of worried uncertainty. Jia Ningxi stopped writing, turned around and looked this way suspiciously. Under her hand was a fresh set of test papers. She was always like that, gifted, yet hardworking. I did not dare turn back, and instead admitted it under everyone's concerned gazes. I am dropping out. These things on the desk are all free. If you need them, just take whatever you want. The classroom erupted in an uproar. Of course, everyone there was a proper, well-behaved student, so dropping out was practically unthinkable to them. Ignoring everyone's chatter, I tied up the sleeves of my school jacket and hoisted those books onto my shoulder. From the corner of my eye, I caught Xi and Ningxi's disapproving gaze. I had not even taken a few steps before. Then I suddenly remembered something. I made a sudden dash to the podium and said to everyone with a cheeky grin, "You are all good students, so study hard, all right? Use me as the cautionary example, especially you, Xi and Ningxi. Keep being a good student with a bright future." In my last life, she got stuck with my shameless pestering. And although she liked me, I still never broke through that paper-thin barrier between us. It was not until I chased after her to the city where she went to college, the engineering university, and kept pursuing her for more than a year before we finally got together. Thinking about it now, her being willing to like me was largely because, in the tense, repetitive grind of senior year, someone like me, an unstable factor, had barged in. That youthful novelty was mistaken by her for a hazy kind of liking. The grade's top female student and the bottom of the class loser as a couple was exactly the kind of thing clueless teenagers love to gossip about. Once I finished speaking, I turned and found the old homeroom teacher looking at me with obvious heartache. There was nothing for it. People like him, who carried such a strong sense of responsibility, were just like that. Even if a bottom-of-the-class loser like me was dropping out, he still felt it was a shame. After thinking it over, when I reached the door, I quickly whispered to the old homeroom teacher, "You can use me as a cautionary example whenever you want in the future. I will not sue you for infringement." As the old homeroom teacher's brow tightened, and he prepared to bring the ruler down on my butt, I had already seen it coming and slipped away. The moment I approached the gate with a bag of books on my shoulder, I was stopped by that agile security uncle, who blocked me with a stainless steel pole. I held my leave slip out in front of him, then swaggered out through the school gate. I sold the books wrapped in my school jacket to the scrap collector. "Kid, you're not going to school anymore." As I was leaving, I was counting the 28 yuan and 80 cents I had just gotten back, when the security uncle asked me with concern. I waved a hand, and without looking back said, "I'm not studying anymore. I am not cut out for it." Then I brought my index and middle fingers together, and sincerely said goodbye to this school. This time, I severed the fated knot between Xi and Ningxi and me at the root. Judging from her life path, there was a very high chance the two of us would never meet again. How wonderful! I clutched the huge sum tucked into my waistband. I wandered halfway around the city again. At last, I found the starting point of my business venture, and officially began the second step of the moon project. That night, I timed it and went back once more. Sure enough, that old bastard had gone out drinking again. After a flurry of work inside the house, I was ready to head out. I headed out without the slightest hesitation. I let out a heavy breath. I strolled through every street corner, while scouting where my business empire should be built. Before I knew it, night had fallen. I gnawed on a steamed bun as I went, and dinner was taken care of that way. What can I say? I was a real picky one. After checking out another spot, I slammed on the brakes at the corner. I hurriedly ducked behind a wall. Only after watching Xi and Ningxi hug her school bag and hurry home did I step out from behind. I caught sight of her open school bag and the tugged-at school uniform, and my eyes sharpened with thought. Xi and Ningxi has always treasured her books. Xi and Ningxi has always treasured her books. Then I frowned, grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground, and tucked a broken wooden stick into the back of my pants. Then I slipped into the alley she had come from. The moment I went in, I ran into 3 dyed-hair punks. One look, and I knew they were even worse at studying than I was. I looked at the pink wallet they had tossed on the ground, and instantly understood. Xi and Ningxi had just been robbed. Damn it, those 3 pieces of trash. The punks noticed me, and tossed away the cigarettes in their hands. After glancing at my school uniform, they let out a whistle. It was obvious they thought I was an easy mark too. I pulled out the cigarette I had forgotten to throw away, held it up and grinned as I walked over. Under the punks' knowing looks, I flung the dirt in my hand at them, while they bent over, clutching their eyes and swearing. I yanked out the broken stick from behind my waist and slammed it hard into them. In my last life, after I started clinging to Xi and Ningxi, I never dared cause trouble or throw hands again, because she did not like it. After so many years, I was still a little rusty getting back into it. Damn it, it took me quite a bit of effort. I touched the injury at the corner of my mouth and ran the whole way. To take a shortcut, I even accidentally stepped on a dog while climbing over a wall. It chased me for the whole way. Still, thanks to it, I actually got to the bottom of her building before Xi and Ningxi did. I threw her wallet onto the path she had to take. After seeing Xi and Ningxi pick up the wallet, I immediately turned and left. Touching the cut at the corner of my mouth, I looked up at the bright moon and left completely satisfied. After careful calculation, I finally put my startup capital toward a three-way intersection not far from a middle school. Not only was foot traffic heavy, it was also easy to get to. It made it easy to hop on my beloved bike and take off whenever I needed to. I never expected that I would even run into the old homeroom teacher. I handed him a grilled sausage, extra numbing and extra spicy, as thanks for the money he had backed me with, like an original investor. Seeing him still hesitate, I shoved it into his hand. Then I hurriedly called to my other customers. Foot traffic came in waves. The little stall that had been lively a moment ago was suddenly dead quiet. I glanced sideways at the old homeroom teacher, who looked like he wanted to say something, but held back, and casually stuffed a starch sausage into my own mouth. "So this is your idea of starting a business?" the old homeroom teacher asked cautiously, afraid he might wound my pitiful self-esteem. His lips were bright red from the spice. I was perfectly calm about it. But the old homeroom teacher looked downright awkward, as if I were up to something shady. "Do not let my stall size fool you. I can still make a decent amount in a day. I will be able to pay you back very soon." I smacked my lips as I said it. No wonder I will be the king of snack stalls someday. The starch sausage really is delicious. The old homeroom teacher wiped the sweat the spice had brought out on his forehead. He shook his head, unconcerned. After hesitating for a long time, he finally asked, "Are you really not going to study anymore?" "No, I'm not. What good would it do if I did? With my trash-level ability, I'd never find a job. Might as well come out early and start a business." I cleaned the grill, looking at the empty stall, and I couldn't help but wonder. This time of day used to be peak business. So, why was no one coming up to my stall today? While I was still suspicious, I wiped the grease off my hands and went on. The main thing was, I didn't have tuition money. Back then, I was secretly washing dishes for people, and I stupidly left that money at home, only for that old bastard to get his hands on it. In my last life, I still thought like a student. Even though I couldn't study, I still wanted to cling to school no matter what. I even worried about it. This life, though, was better. Once I'd seen through it, I rubbed my face, and then looked down to check my clothes. Watching the students around me keep sneaking glances this way, I grew even more suspicious. Why wasn't anyone coming over? As I was thinking it over, I absent-mindedly glanced at the side, where the old homeroom teacher was pursing, his lips expressionless. I instantly realized where the problem was. Without caring whether he wanted to or not, I shoved another grilled sausage into his hand. "Mu Yiqiang, I don't want it. Take it. If you don't hold it in your hand, I won't have any customers." The old homeroom teacher didn't catch my meaning. Only after he saw a swarm of students suddenly gathering around did he react. Turns out his teacherly authority had scared the kids off. Sure enough, students really are afraid of teachers. Finally, customers came again. I hurriedly took the money, my hands constantly moving. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the old homeroom teacher was still standing there. So I asked casually, "How did the last test go?" "Oh, pretty well. Everyone kept up pretty well." Hearing that I was still worried about the classmates in my class, the old homeroom teacher looked very relieved. He held the starch sausage up high in his hand. I couldn't help but feel moved. I hadn't expected the old homeroom teacher to help me bring in customers. Pretending to be casual, I asked again, "Is Ningxi still first? Isn't that obvious?" Ningxi has to be first, without question. Listening to the old homeroom teacher's proud tone, I couldn't help nodding. Yes, Ningxi had always been outstanding. If she hadn't married me in my last life, if she hadn't been held back by me and the child, she would definitely have become someone admired by many. The oil on the grill crackled and sizzled. It was a little hot to the touch. Looking at the crowd of students in front of me, I suddenly remembered. Today wasn't a weekend. "Old homeroom teacher, you're not teaching today." Seeing me too busy to handle everything, the old homeroom teacher stretched out his free hand to help me collect the money. "Oh." Today, the senior year classes all walked together to climb the mountain. We all made it back. I just walked faster than everyone else. As he said it, he could not help but sigh a little. "Sigh, you students are getting worse and worse physically. None of you can even walk as fast as an old man like me." Hearing that, I immediately had a bad feeling. I looked up and saw that the old homeroom teacher was enthusiastically waving to someone in the distance. Grease from the grilled sausage slid down the bamboo skewer, dripping onto my hand. When I looked that way, I saw a long line of students. At a glance, I spotted Ningxi in the crowd. She was chatting softly with the classmates around her, a shy smile on her lips. There was a rare ease in her expression. It was not until someone at the stall impatiently jostled me that I hurriedly lowered my head and went back to my practice motions. Only this time, I kept my head even lower, like I wanted to bury myself in the grill. "Students, over here." As soon as the old homeroom teacher shouted in that booming voice, he instantly drew everyone over. I glanced sideways, a little gritting my teeth, only to see the old homeroom teacher giving me a smug eyebrow raise. "Yiqiang, so it is you. Long time no see. It really is strange not having you around in class." Heh. I put on an official smile and said, "That was polite of him, all right." Without me weighing the class down, the class average probably went up. The old homeroom teacher patted my shoulder and waved his hand grandly. "Today, my treat. I will buy grilled sausages for the whole class. Take as many as you like. Just tell Yiqiang." Wow. Thanks, old homeroom teacher. And thanks to Yiqiang too. Someone suddenly shouted that from the crowd. And before long, everyone was thanking me one after another. Anyone who didn't know better would think I donated a fortune. I stole a glance at Ningxi, and she was curiously sizing things up here. I quickly pulled my gaze back and flashed a smile at all those young, innocent faces. "Come on, we are classmates. How can I possibly let you pay? If you want some, take a few." Wow, that is so cool. Exactly. You are way too nice. The old homeroom teacher beside me wanted to cut in, but I was quicker and shoved the grilled sausage he was holding straight into his mouth. One by one, the students were enthusiastic yet shy. Those with money in their pockets ignored my protest and insisted on paying. Those without money were tempted, but felt too embarrassed to eat for free. So I had no choice but to put the cash pouch away and hand them out one by one. If anyone was too embarrassed, I would just shove the grilled sausage into their mouth. Simple and efficient. Honestly, even though I wasn't much of a student, I quite liked these students. Simple-minded and not really malicious. For a while, even with the old homeroom teacher helping beside me, I was still crazy busy. I looked at the crisp grilled sausages on the far right, carefully picked one up, brushed it with ketchup, and sprinkled a little chili powder on top. "Ningxi, this one is yours." I murmured her name, and my heart suddenly felt hot. Ningxi looked pleasantly surprised for a moment, and took the grilled sausage from my hand with a smile in her eyes. She could not handle spicy food, but she still craved chili for some reason. In my last life, every time I went out to eat with her, there was always one spicy order and one non-spicy order. "Wow, Ningxi, this grilled sausage of yours is perfect." "Really?" Ningxi took a bite. The chili powder on top made her eyes crinkle. She instinctively stuck out her tongue, and I acted surprised. "Hey, it really is. Ningxi, you're really lucky." "Thank you." A brilliant flower seemed to bloom in Ningxi's eyes and brows. Her eyes shimmered with clear, bright light. In my last life, I loved teasing her. When studying left her exhausted, I would quietly kiss her eyes and brows, watching her dazed eyes, then wrap my arms around her. Ningxi was very happy, but when her gaze landed on me, she pulled away as if she had been burned. Then a flush crept up her cheeks. I looked down and remembered I was wearing a white tank top today. My chest muscles were faintly visible, and grease on my stomach had made the shirt cling to my skin. Isn't this just business competition? If I were not dressed like this, my business wouldn't be doing better than everyone else's. Ningxi, study hard, okay? Hearing that, Ningxi looked up and gave me a faint smile, yet she stayed as polite and composed as ever. After that, I kept my head down and stayed busy with what I was doing. Only when the old homeroom teacher checked the time and led the big group away did I dare to lift my head. I greedily traced Ningxi's retreating figure with my eyes. Her long hair swayed high behind her, showing confidence in every move. There was no trace at all of the postpartum depression she would one day suffer. In my last life, because of my education, I could not find a decent job. So I set up a stall and started a business in the city where Ningxi went to university. The grade's top female student and the bottom of the class underachiever ending up together. Sounds nice enough, but nobody thought it would last. Even I was often haunted by doubts, because Ningxi was simply too outstanding. After class, she often came to my stall to help. When she ran into classmates from school, she would also boldly link her arm through mine and proudly introduce me as her boyfriend. Even if they did not say it, I could still tell what they were thinking. What a beautiful flower stuck in a pile of manure. Although Ningxi did not think there was anything wrong with it, I did not want her living a hard life. So I worked several jobs a day, scrimping and saving. Ningxi was very observant. She noticed something was off with me and asked her family for a sum of money. I don't know how her family agreed to it, but looking at Ningxi's reddened eyes, I clenched my teeth and vowed I wouldn't let her suffer with a nobody like me. With the money I had saved from my earlier jobs, plus the money from Ningxi's family, I took over a shuttered factory. I planned to turn it into a full starch sausage operation. Those few years, Ningxi always felt sorry that I was living such a hard life. But I did not feel that way at all. Instead, life felt more and more promising. It was the promise of a future for me and Ningxi. I never expected that if I really gave it a try, I would actually make something of myself. Later, when Ningxi was in graduate school, her tuition, and all sorts of research expenses that had to be advanced upfront, all came out of our shared card. Life was smooth sailing. While Ningxi was in grad school, we got married. The property deed was written in her name and her parents' names. Anyway, all I had on my side was that old bastard. I was not about to let him benefit from it. But when Ningxi was accepted straight into a doctoral program, she found out she was pregnant. As the fruit of our love, after discussing it with me, Ningxi decided to keep the baby. While she stayed home waiting to give birth, her doctoral studies were delayed. The factory also ran into trouble because of the online uproar over the starch sausage ingredients. The products were not selling. During that stretch of time, I was completely swamped. Ningxi was often upset that she could not share the burden of the family. She often cried in secret behind my back. Later on, Ningxi gave birth to our little girl. Then she developed postpartum depression. That was when I finally realized how frightening mental illness could be. I regretted countless times as her beloved why I had not noticed sooner, even though Ningxi was still as considerate as ever, so as not to worry me. She was always smiling. I could clearly tell it was forced. The helplessness of the factory crisis, the forced halt to her academic research, and the panic of becoming a mother for the first time, all of it together, left her trapped at home as a housewife. Ningxi, such an outstanding person, yet she was helplessly trapped at home, like a blooming rose, slowly withering away. I thought about it carefully later. Under the high-hanging bright moon, I felt utterly disheartened. Someone as excellent as Ningxi should not be shackled by family duties. She should not be bound by the chains of being a wife. She should belong to herself, and only to herself. She should not be my wife and the mother of my child. Though the scattered stars reach for the moon at the horizon, they can only sigh that it hangs to hide to ever claim. From the very beginning, Ningxi should never have been held back by someone like me. The classmates gradually walked away. I stayed where I was, watching their youthful backs recede. "Boss, give me a grilled sausage, please." The customer handed over 3 bills. I took them eagerly and asked for the flavor as usual. I kept at it until nightfall. Just as I was about to pack up the stall, I saw that old bastard marching straight toward me, looking vicious. He was holding a bottle and took a swig from it. He was probably trying to steady his nerves. I raised a brow in surprise. I hadn't expected this guy, drunk all day long, to find me here, would actually find his way here. What surprised me even more was that he had shown up so late. "You piece of trash. How dare you sell off the things in my house? I was too damn good to you, was I?" He put his hand on my beloved bike, ready to flip it over. Ridiculous. Did he think that because there were a lot of people here, I would not dare beat him myself? What a joke. In my last life, I already regretted not dealing with him sooner. I grabbed his wrist, then twisted it hard upward. The old bastard cried out in agony. I dragged him aside with ease and said to him, "Relax. I did not sell much. Some of it I am still using. Besides, some of it was bought with my money." The old bastard could not break free from my grip, his eyes darting about, clearly up to no good. Sure enough, the next second he collapsed onto the ground and started throwing a full-blown tantrum, rolling on the ground. Oh, help! This unfilial son. He dared hit his own father. "Come and look, everyone. Come see a son beating his father." He flailed his arms wildly, and his feet kept kicking at the ground. Dust rose into the air with his movements, settling onto his wrinkled, foul-smelling clothes. The people around us watched, some shocked, some sympathetic, others watching it indifferently, but none dared step forward to stop him. I watched him make a scene in silence, watching this absurd performance unfold. Back when the factory ran into trouble in my last life, that old bastard shamelessly came looking for Ningxi. In broad daylight, he grabbed and tugged at her, acting like a total thug. He wanted to squeeze out some money for drinks before the place shut down. Ningxi had heard from me how shameless that old bastard was, but she had no idea he was this filthy. I still remembered it. Ningxi had finally started recovering from her illness. She went out holding our child, but the people around her, who did not know the truth, pointed and whispered, leaving her helpless and flustered. Before she married me, Ningxi had only ever been praised like the center of the world. She had never been stared at like some kind of spectacle. The old bastard's yelling rang in my ears. His shameless face overlapped with the one I remembered from my last life. My numb heart stirred with a trace of irritation. I suddenly seized his collar and yanked him up. A hint of scarlet crept into my eyes. I warned him, keep making a scene. The bigger, the better. Let everyone know that filthy bastard never raised me. I roared, pouring out all the pain this biological father had caused me. Father. He had squandered every penny my mother left behind. The fact that I was still alive was truly thanks to the kindness of the people around me. You never raised me. Do not expect me to show you filial respect. If you dare show your face in front of me again, I will report you. Do not forget how much money you have stolen from me. Those words rattled the old bastard. The people around us also started pointing at him and whispering. The moment I let go, he immediately collapsed to the ground. Just as I turned away, I heard the sound of shattering glass, along with someone's warning. The old bastard lunged at me with the broken bottle, but I only stared straight at him. I looked into his crazed eyes. A wave of weariness rose in my heart. So annoying. There was no meaning in a life like this. Might as well die. That way, Ningxi's life and mine would become two parallel lines, never crossing again. As the crowd around us gasped and screamed, I seemed to glimpse the Ningxi from my last life. After I told her about my pitiful, rodent-like life, she simply held my face, forcing me to look into her eyes. She told me, solemnly and word for word, not to let anyone else step into my life. I had to live in my own way. Even if you're down in the mud, you can still find a way to stand again. She kissed my brow and eyes, and gently told me, my love, you are not a bad man. When I came back to myself, my body reacted before my mind did. I stepped back half a pace. The Ningxi from my last life pulled me back from behind. The sharp bottle only stabbed into my right arm. The bright, warm blood snapped the old bastard's reason back into control. He trembled and let go. He trembled all over, fear flooding his eyes. I could not help but snort. A bastard so repulsive even his relatives wanted nothing to do with him. And yet he was scared of me. What was he afraid of? That I would send him to the police. I clutched my bleeding right arm and looked down at him expressionlessly, as if I could not feel the pain. I parted my pale lips and gave him my final warning. I will say this one last time. Do not ever appear in my sight again. Otherwise, with this assault added to the list, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. The old bastard swallowed hard. The stink of the spilled liquor made me feel sick. Get lost already. Can't you see they've called the police? My helpful reminder sent the old bastard scrambling to his feet. He ran off without looking back. I picked up the broken glass shards one by one from the ground and threw them into the trash. Then I got on my beloved bike and rode off. That old bastard was truly both stupid and useless. I was bluffing him. The people around here were neither relatives nor neighbors. Who would call the police? This is a family matter. I went to the hospital to get the wound on my arm treated. The moment I smelled that disinfectant odor, I felt uneasy everywhere inside. In my last life, Ningxi suffered from postpartum depression. She refused to admit she had developed a mental illness. I could only keep running to the hospital over and over. And before long, after my shameless request, I even added the doctor on WeChat. She told me that even with active care from family, a new mother can still develop postpartum depression. The childbirth process had already caused some damage and exhaustion to the mother's body. At the same time, after giving birth, she still had to care for a newborn. That could leave the mother's body and mental state relatively fragile. Even if family members gave her some care and attention, it still might not be enough to meet her emotional and psychological needs. If a new mother lacks enough social and emotional support, she could end up feeling isolated, helpless, and down. Every time I thought of that, I could not help but slap myself. Is that how a husband acts, you bastard? But But Ningxi was sick herself, yet she would often comfort me and understand me, knowing how exhausting it was for me to run back and forth between both sides. My wife, my beloved wife. Damn it, she was just a good. I left the hospital in a hurry and finally made it back to the new home I had found under the bridge. It was only after I saw dog shit inside the flimsy tent that I could not help crawling out and pointing at the air while cursing at the top of my lungs. Unbelievable. I usually joke that this place was a doghouse, but I never thought a dog would actually shit here. Cursing under my breath, I cleaned up the bedding. I lay down on the bed. Through the little skylight I had dug into the tent, I looked up at the moon through it. Moon, oh moon, moon, oh moon. Please keep my beloved safe and sound in this life. In the days that followed, besides the time I went to repay money to the grade director and the old homeroom teacher, I happened to catch a glimpse of Ningxi once, and after that, I never saw her again. Later on, after the college entrance exam ended, I ran into her again when she came by to support my business. I was so scared I immediately moved my stall somewhere else. This time, until she went off to college in another city, I never ran into her again. Good. Ningxi's brilliant life had begun. Bit by bit, time passed. It had already been since I last saw Ningxi. 2 years, 3 months, and 5 days. Sigh. Honestly, I did not want to keep track of the days myself, but I had this odd gift for it. The dates would pop into my head on their own. I even thought I had awakened some hidden talent. Then I borrowed some middle school study materials and took one look. Great. My vision started to swim. Sure enough, I still was not cut out for studying. Boss, give me a grilled sausage. There it was again, that familiar voice. I seasoned it with extra numbing spice and extra chili without missing a beat. One hand took the money, the other handed over the sausage. Watching the old homeroom teacher hiss and suck in air from the heat, I laughed at him, all while twisting open his water bottle for him. Old homeroom teacher, how are you this good? Why is it that no matter where I set up, you can always find me? Over these past few years, I had changed locations all the time whenever holidays came around, to avoid running into Ningxi as much as possible. But every single time, the old homeroom teacher found me without fail. The old homeroom teacher gave me a smug squint. He patted his increasingly obvious beer belly with satisfaction. That is skill. I gave a soft laugh, looking at his increasingly sparse crown, and called out a reminder. When you are older, eat less of these greasy, salty foods. Watch out for the 3 highs. But he just waved it off. So I could only shrug helplessly. After serving another customer, I pulled a red velvet box from my coat. His eyelid twitched. His eyes were full of delight. For me. Yeah. Wasn't it Teacher's Day not long ago? I was afraid my bad grades would embarrass you, so I did not go. I had to make up the gift somehow. Oh. You kid. Listen to you. The boss tossed away the bamboo skewer and rubbed his hands on his clothes. Then he accepted my gift pen. I like this gift. The old homeroom teacher grinned, and even his sparse hair looked like it was dancing. I did not know how such a small gift could make him that happy. Were the other students really coming to see you empty-handed? How could that be? But as long as they put their heart into it, that's enough. I idly wiped down the grill and quietly steered the topic toward Ningxi. The moment I mentioned Ningxi, his star student, that burst of excitement came right back. Ningxi, I hear she's doing really well at university. Oh, of course. That was a given. Ningxi was outstanding. Always the best at everything. Her. Of course. The old homeroom teacher held the pen up and looked it over from top to bottom. Finally, he squinted at the English on it. He rolled his tongue around in his mouth several times, but still could not pronounce a proper word. I did not understand what this math teacher was getting hung up on with English letters. I saw the old homeroom teacher suddenly turn around in a mysterious way, his back to me as he sneaked around. Was he getting emotional and crying? I was about to comfort him when he spun back around as if shocked by electricity, as though he were holding a hot potato. Why is this pen so expensive? Are you crazy? Go return it. The old homeroom teacher held his phone in his right hand, the screen still on the shopping app page. In a flurry of panic, he shoved the pen back into the box. He tried several times, but could not line it up right. Take it. You know perfectly well that these past years I have not only been running a stall, with the experience from my last life. Besides the grilled sausage stall, I had run other businesses too. You could say I was way ahead of the market. I saved up a sum of money early on, and bought out a factory locally. That put me on the road to wealth just like in my last life. The reason I am still running a stall is purely because I love it. Besides, the old homeroom teacher had been stubbornly coming to support my business all these years, and his little stash had really taken a hit. After I talked him round, the old homeroom teacher finally slipped the pen into his pocket with ease. "Thank you, Yiqiang." I pouted helplessly and corrected him again. "I have told you many times. Call me Mu Chen. Do not keep using that old, uncool name." The old homeroom teacher stroked the pen hidden in his pocket, pressed his lips together, and shook his head from side to side. "Yo, Mu Chen, Mu Chen." Hearing his sarcastic tone, I could not help rolling my eyes. The old homeroom teacher sat on the flower bed behind me and chatted with me casually. "How did you end up choosing such a literary-sounding name? You never seemed this cultured before." Her. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Ningxi gave it to me in my last life. Mu Chen. Damn it. The old homeroom teacher nodded. That's so cultured. I could not help turning back to look at the old homeroom teacher in surprise. That made him a little uneasy. He thought it was cultured too. In my last life, I badgered Ningxi into giving me a nice name. After thinking it over for several days, she gave me several options. This Mu Chen was just one she picked casually. The others might have been even more cultured. Her. But I fell for this name at first sight. Could it be that bookish people like the old homeroom teacher and Ningxi just shared this kind of unspoken understanding? I glanced at the sky. I immediately decided to close up the stall. I brushed sauce onto the few grilled sausages left. Then I handed the package to the old homeroom teacher. "Take it. This is my gift to the teacher's wife." Before the old homeroom teacher could even fish out his wallet, I was already on my beloved bike, speeding off in a flash. I stopped by the bridge. I pulled out a bag of dog food I had just bought. I had long since moved out from under the bridge. I just did not need some of the old sheets and duvet covers anymore, so I simply set up a doghouse there. I was about to shout to gather the dog gang, when I had not even reached the doghouse yet, and saw the person I had been thinking about day and night standing there. Good heavens! Why was Ningxi here? I darted behind a tree and hid at once. Just like in my last life, Ningxi had taken off her glasses. Her hair was straightened. She looked so beautiful she seemed to glow. "Ningxi, do not be sad. Uncle will be fine." Only then did I notice there was another girl standing beside Ningxi. She was crouching with her, teasing the little dog. Oh, isn't that someone I know? It was her best friend. I remembered she wrote novels. I had not even seen her just now. Ningxi kept her head lowered. A faint cloud of worry filled her eyes without warning. Her lightly furrowed brows nearly broke my heart. I slapped my forehead, trying hard to remember what had happened at this point in my last life. What accident had happened to my dear father-in-law? In my last life, Ningxi suddenly asked the school for a leave of absence. She left in a hurry before she could explain to me. The factory was still in its startup phase then. She told me to keep an eye on it, and would not let me go back with her. There was nothing I could do. I could only take my phone and everything I could use in my accounts and give it all to Ningxi. Later, after I kept pressing her, she finally said that her father had fallen and hurt his leg. Ningxi's parents were both ordinary working-class people. They worked at the factory. Her father climbed up and down every day, and that was how this accident happened. I frowned, my fingers clamping hard around the tree trunk. Ningxi shook her head and patted the puppy's head. After letting out a sigh, she left with her best friend. Her shoulders looked a little slumped. Only after several minutes, and after I made sure they were completely out of sight, did I dare come out. Seeing an old acquaintance, the dog gang immediately swarmed over. I absent-mindedly poured dog food into the bowl, then patted the puppy's head. It seemed like there was still some warmth left from Ningxi's hand. In my last life, even after my dear father-in-law broke his leg, and the treatment costs were sky-high, he still would not use the money I gave Ningxi. She was afraid that if she used my money, her daughter would be made to feel inferior in front of me. My beloved wife was wonderful. Her parents were wonderful too. In the end, I still had to sneak around behind Ningxi's back and call my dear father-in-law. I told him I was there to pay him back. It was the money Ningxi had borrowed from them back then. I even forged an IOU with interest on it. Then, after all my promises, my father-in-law finally gave a stiff nod. He still did not forget to warn me in the end, telling me not to bully his daughter, or she would break my legs too. My dear father-in-law and dear mother-in-law were both honest people. The kind who would rather sell off their assets than ask relatives or friends for help. Thinking of that, I rubbed my aching head. My dear father-in-law, I really like her. Then, I slapped my forehead and called the factory side. After a round of instructions, I immediately rode my beloved bike to the supermarket. I picked out several gifts that were expensive but not flashy. Then I headed straight to the old homeroom teacher's house. Then came another practice slide into a kneel. I carried something in each hand and clung tightly to the old homeroom teacher and his wife. I still remembered to politely greet their son and daughter-in-law. I do not have many strengths, just a thick enough face. Otherwise, Ningxi would never have fallen for my sweet talk in my last life. After I finished making my request, the old homeroom teacher immediately pursed his lips. The tense look vanished from his face. He shot me an exasperated look. Yiqiang, you could have just said so. You nearly scared me to death. Seeing you come in like that, I thought you wanted me to embezzle something. This is settled. My dear father-in-law, your son-in-law. No, your son-in-law from your last life has come to save you from misery. I left the gifts and the freshly produced sausage products from the factory at the old homeroom teacher's house. When I was leaving, I looked at the old homeroom teacher's little grandson and said kindly, "Little one, you have to study hard, or you'll end up like me." Before I could even finish, the old homeroom teacher kicked me right out. The security door slammed shut without mercy. I stared at the good luck character on the door, once again marveling at how kind the old homeroom teacher was. He could not even bear to give me a free bad example. I already said I would not charge him royalties. Honestly, I was still a little worried about Ningxi. She was a stubborn person, and she always liked to shoulder everything herself. These past few days had to have been hard on her. With my brain, which had never gone through the college entrance exam, I thought it through carefully. Then I slapped my thigh. I started staking out her best friend's place, where she was staying during her leave of absence from school. I had known in my last life that her best friend was a total homebody. But how could she be this much of a shut-in? It was the whole day, and I finally saw her come downstairs. I immediately zipped up my jacket, pulling it up over half my face. I lowered my head and pretended to look at my phone. Wow. There are free balloons at the amusement park, and the Ferris wheel is free too. Wow. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Seeing her best friend's expression was flat, I immediately ducked into the stairwell, took off my jacket, turned it inside out, and put it back on. Good thing I was smart. I had worn a shirt that could be flipped and worn either way. I jogged over to her best friend, pretending to be just another passerby. My God. There are free balloons at the amusement park, and the Ferris wheel is free too. Wow. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Then I threw off the jacket again and pretended to pass by her best friend again. Oh my God. There are free balloons at the amusement park, and the Ferris wheel is free too. This only happens once in a lifetime. You have to go with your best friend. Just as I was wondering whether to run back bare-chested and make another trip, I finally heard her call Ningxi. Let's go to the amusement park together. The Ferris wheel is free today. Ningxi did not seem to agree. She immediately started speaking in a sing-song voice. Please. Just keep me company. Please. Then I saw her smile happily and immediately turned to go back upstairs. Yes, it worked. Before I could even feel pleased, a gust of wind hit me, and I sneezed. Damn it. Which bastard is cursing me behind my back? I sniffed twice and pulled my jacket back on. By Ningxi's habits, she usually spent a steady 35 minutes on makeup, so I had plenty of time to make my way slowly to the amusement park. The moment I had just settled onto my beloved bike, I unexpectedly saw her best friend come downstairs in a different outfit. Oh my God. My eyes went wide, and I watched helplessly as she rode off on a shared bike and got there first. Oh no. That was a miscalculation. Ningxi must be so heartbroken to go out without even putting on makeup. My heart was breaking. I rolled up my sleeves and started pedaling my beloved bike like crazy. Only after I saw her best friend stop beneath Ningxi's building did I dare breathe out. But I still did not slow down, as expected of the bike that had carried me through the business world. It got there more than 10 minutes before them. I stood in the middle of the amusement park wearing a mascot costume and spotted Ningxi at a glance. She looked a little thinner than before. Her hair was simply tied up, and there was a faint bruise-colored shadow under her eyes. I rushed forward in one stride and handed over the one I had been clutching tightly in my left hand, the sunflower balloon, to Ningxi. I did not forget to hand one to her best friend as well. Ningxi was delighted. Her eyes lit up instantly, and the corners of her mouth lifted on their own. At last, the pain look was gone from her face. Thank you. She took the balloon and thanked me politely. Then she walked past me. Her best friend excitedly shook her arm. See, I told you there were free balloons. Come on, let's go. The Ferris wheel is free too. I pretended to hand out balloons and followed not far behind them. I listened as her best friend kept comforting her. Stop looking so miserable. Didn't Uncle's medical bills already get sorted out? Heaven is watching over you. The grilled sausage your old homeroom teacher brought actually had a scratch-off card. That won a grand prize. But it still feels unreal to me. What is there to be afraid of? You already have the money. The money is real. Ningxi smiled faintly and tied the sunflower balloon to her wrist. When you put it that way, heaven really is watching over me. After hearing them out, the balloons in my hands had all been handed out. Only then did I finally relax. The old homeroom teacher really came through. Coming up with this diversion tactic. I really was a genius. I had barely been happy for a few seconds when Ningxi and her best friend had already reached the Ferris wheel. While they were lining up, I stood behind them, frantically signaling the staff there. When it was their turn, the staff member, who had already taken the money, smiled brightly. He stepped forward into quick strides. Wow. To beautiful ladies. You are really so lucky. You are exactly our 100th customer today. The Ferris wheel ride is free. After the staff member finished speaking, he handed the flowers to Ningxi. Sunlight spilled through the scattered clouds, painting a mosaic of shifting light and shadow, and draping the earth in a layer of golden gauze. She lowered her head, gently inhaling the bloom in her hand, vivid and dewy. Her movements were so soft, as if she were afraid of disturbing this unexpected gift. Ningxi's eyes slowly closed, her face filled with an indescribable calm and contentment. In my last life, every day I set up my stall, I would buy her a flower. I would pin it behind Ningxi's ear. The florist knew me by sight because of it. When we bought flowers for our wedding, she even gave me a special 20% discount. I chose the flowers myself. Ningxi would definitely like them. Ningxi linked arms with her best friend and got on the Ferris wheel. With a smile in her eyes, she looked down and casually scanned the amusement park below. When I felt her gaze sweep over me, I immediately raised both hands above my head and made a huge heart. I vaguely saw Ningxi tap her best friend's arm to tell her to look quickly. The Ferris wheel slowly started up. I tilted my head up, quietly watching her rise into the air with it. In my last life, it was on the Ferris wheel that Ningxi and I made our feelings official. Ferris wheel, please carry away my beloved's worries. After one full turn of the Ferris wheel, Ningxi and her best friend walked down arm in arm. The wisps of hair at her forehead fluttered in the wind, mingling with the fragrance of the flowers around her. When they passed by me, I heard her best friend say, Ningxi, you are so lucky. I think so too. Ningxi went on a lot more rides. I stayed not far from them the whole time, watching them play and take photos. The sun slowly began to set, and its yellow glow gradually softened. Its edges were tinted with a faint orange, red, and violet afterglow, making Ningxi's hem keep shifting colors. Fortunately, Ningxi kept smiling the whole time. Watching her, I could not keep the smile off my face. Though this mascot costume was getting a little hot, when they were tired out and getting ready to leave, I finally took out the instant camera and held up the sign on my chest that said free photos, no charge. It's you. You are still here. Ningxi looked at me with a smile in her eyes. She pointed at the Ferris wheel and copied me by making a heart. Yes, I have been here the whole time. I nodded and raised the instant camera to take their photo. Ningxi lifted the flower and held it beside her face. Sunlight slipped through the gaps in the petals and fell across her face, casting a soft halo of light. It made her features even gentler and more beautiful. Looking at Ningxi through the camera, my heart gave a jolt, and I pressed the shutter. The photo developed quickly. Ningxi, and it was still beautiful. Postpartum depression is cruel. In my last life, after Ningxi got sick, she would inexplicably scream herself hoarse over some issue. Once she calmed down, she would cover her face and apologize to me while crying. Back then, she smashed every mirror in the house because she could not accept the person staring back at her. Her body had changed. Her face was haggard, and every day she felt some nameless resentment well up inside her. Thank you. Ningxi smiled at me and took the photo from my hand. She huddled with her best friend and whispered a few words. I turned and looked at her straight back and let out a dazed breath and walked to the amusement park staff lounge, my legs aching. To the amusement park staff lounge. I took off the mascot costume and immediately collapsed onto the floor. I sniffed, feeling like I might be catching a cold. My head was spinning. It seemed like I heard Ningxi calling to me. I opened my eyes in a daze and saw Ningxi peeking curiously from the doorway. I shot up from the floor, just as I fumbled to grab the mascot head again. Ningxi came over in surprise. Mu Yiqiang, long time no see. After she saw the mascot costume in my hands, the delight in her eyes only grew. So you were behind this mascot costume? No wonder it felt so familiar. I immediately shook my head in denial. Before I could even speak, I saw the manager here pop his head out from the window. After you're done with the mascot costume, put it back where it belongs. I work here. I looked at Ningxi's smiling eyes, but I could not think of an explanation, so I could only give her a faint nod. I put the mascot costume back in place. Then, ignoring Ningxi's urge to keep talking to me, I strode away. As I passed the entrance, I accidentally bumped her best friend's shoulder. Sorry, I apologized quickly. Then I turned half sideways and hurried off. Only after I had gone far away did I finally gather the courage to stop. I slowly crouched by the wall and wiped away the tears that had slipped out. Then I sniffled, sneezed once, and hurried home. I did not know exactly how long Ningxi had taken leave, but I still tried my best to avoid her. So for a long stretch of time, I did not go back to setting up my stall, which scared the old homeroom teacher into calling me for several days in a row. He asked if I had died. I was so done with him. Could not he at least hope for something better for me? Until I secretly ran to the hospital and finally managed to wait until my dear father-in-law was discharged. At that time, I still did not run into Ningxi. So I finally felt safe enough to keep setting up my stall. Life after that was very quiet. I also had a hard time prying Ningxi's situation out of the old homeroom teacher. No helping it. The old homeroom teacher truly knew nothing. My business was still going strong. I set up my stall on time every day and closed it on time. Then I went to feed the dogs in the kennel under the bridge. Every night I would stare at the moon and grin to myself for a while. That kind of life was not bad. And so, more years passed. Ningxi graduated with her bachelor's degree. She was Ningxi, after all, outstanding as ever. What's more, without my interference this time, just like in my last life, she still earned guaranteed admission to the same university's graduate program. Old homeroom teacher, you still came all the way out in this freezing weather to support me. You really are something. I could cry. I rubbed my hands, red from the cold, and handed the spicy grilled sausage to the old homeroom teacher, who was huddled inside his padded coat, bundled up like a little ball, watching him struggle to take off his gloves so he could scan the code and pay. Of course, I'm basically your loyal customer at this point. Why not give me a freebie? Wow, old homeroom teacher, you're still short on money these days. The money in your account is probably breeding on its own. Hearing my flattery, the old homeroom teacher immediately lifted his chin proudly and bit into the sausage. A sheen of sweat broke out on his face. After eating half the sausage, he saw that I still had not said anything and let out a snort. He spoke first. Yo, why aren't you asking about Ningxi today? My eyes widened at once as I looked at the old homeroom teacher, who had that I knew it look on his face. I cautiously scanned the surroundings, then pulled him closer and asked, lowering my voice to ask, how did you know? Heh, you ask how I know. The old homeroom teacher pursed his lips and glared at me. It has been years. Every time you talk, you keep hinting at Ningxi one way or another. Only a fool would not catch on. As he spoke, he glared at me again. I was afraid the winter air would freeze his eyes shut. With your level of book learning, you think you can hide it from me? Dream on. He tossed the skewer into the trash can and said to me, our Ningxi is still single. If you like her, then go after her. I shook my head. I stared blankly at the grill for a long time, saying nothing. Then I snapped back to myself and looked up, only to find the space in front of me empty. That old homeroom teacher left without even saying goodbye. After I snapped at him, he was still holding a grudge. Could being petty really be the only way to make money? I watched the falling snow swirl down, and the snowfall grew heavier and heavier. Gradually, the whole world was coated in white. The canopy over the grilled sausage stall was covered with clear, glistening icicles. I snapped one off and toyed with it in my hand. In my last life, after warming my hands from the snow, I loved rubbing Ningxi's face with them. Then, when she pretended to be angry, I would open my down jacket and pull her into my arms. My fingertips were frozen bright red, and the icicle in my hand melted away completely. I reached up to the snow-covered canopy. Just as I was about to forcefully shut it, I unexpectedly saw a familiar face in front of me. Long time no see. Ningxi stood in the snow, tilted her head and smiled at me. She tugged her scarf down, revealing her flushed cheeks. In just a few seconds, a layer of snow had already settled on her hair. Ningxi, you. Before I could even wonder why she had suddenly appeared here, looking at the snow on her hair. By the time I reacted, I was already holding the canopy over Ningxi's head, standing beside her. Ningxi looked up at me, and her eyes curved. She had put on makeup, and she was as beautiful as ever. I felt my cheeks grow hot. Damn it, it is freezing cold in winter. Why did you come out without an umbrella? I almost blurted out even more. Luckily, I caught myself in time and swallowed the rest of my words. Ningxi glanced at my snow-covered grill, then looked up at me. The snowflakes on her eyelashes melted into droplets. She took a step toward me, and my heart gave a hard thump. I came to thank you. What? For a moment, I was completely at a loss. Ningxi took off her scarf and draped it over her arm, revealing the fair line of her neck. I came to thank the person who helped me get my wallet back. Thank you for going out of your way to bring my dad his medical fees. Thank you for dressing up in a mascot costume to cheer me up. Thank you for sending me flowers. She said a lot in one breath. Every time she said a sentence, my heart trembled each time. I didn't dare look straight into her eyes, and immediately looked away, staring stiffly ahead. Ningxi tilted her head. I accidentally looked at her again. Why yes? You've got the wrong person. Ningxi had not even finished speaking when her best friend suddenly popped out from nowhere, carrying 2 umbrellas. She looked like she'd been possessed by Sherlock Holmes. With a crooked grin, she pulled her phone out of her pocket. Want to see the surveillance footage from that alley? Want to see the amusement park owner's statement? Want to look it up on Buy-to-Bake? Then, she yanked the hesitant old homeroom teacher out from beside us. Need a witness? My head was buzzing, looking at the old homeroom teacher, who kept avoiding my eyes. I was at a loss for words. I just happened to work there. You're overthinking it, Ningxi. Way overthinking it. Oh ho, oh ho, oh ho. Her best friend and the old homeroom teacher both pursed their lips at the same time, with expressions that clearly said, yeah, right? Ningxi was amused by them. She looked into my eyes and said, word for word, thank you. My mouth opened and shut several times. I managed to force out one hurried line. I need to go home. Don't overthink it, Ningxi. I set the snow shelter back in place and was just about to run when Ningxi grabbed me. Unbelievable. Why am I so hopeless? She had only touched my hand. Half my body had gone weak. Damn it. Her hand was still so soft. Ningxi tugged hard a few times, but no matter what she did, she couldn't pull me over. She lifted an eyebrow, then walked over to me herself. She pouted, looking a little downcast. I wanted to pull my hand back, but for some reason, my left arm would not obey me. I couldn't get it free no matter what. Ningxi suddenly looked up, rose onto her toes, her eyes sparkling brightly, and asked, do you want to try dating me? Her bluntness made even my breathing catch for a moment. I wanted to refuse, but my head felt too heavy, like it would not move at all. I thought I must be catching a cold again. Before I could say anything, Ningxi lowered her eyes again. My experience from my last life told me that Ningxi was pretending to be wronged. Usually at times like this, I would pinch her cheeks, then give in with a smile. But that was all in my last life. Looking at Ningxi in front of me, I wanted to call her out, but my throat felt tight, and I couldn't get a word out. Ningxi pressed her palms together, her carefully made-up face drawing close in front of me. Please, don't reject me. We can just get to know each other. After saying that, she did not give me a chance to speak. She held out a hand in front of me. Hello, I am Ningxi. I could feel the hand resting by my leg trembling. In the end, the old homeroom teacher couldn't stand it anymore. He immediately walked over to my side, picked up my hand and put it into Ningxi's. Under her expectant gaze, I opened my mouth, my throat tight with emotion, and said, my name is Mu Chen. Mu Chen is such a nice name. My beloved chose it. Bonus chapter. Sigh. I really am hopeless. The moment Jia and Ningxi leaned in front of me, my mind went blank. What is more? She even smiled at me. Damn that beauty trap. I was defeated. It really works. I avoided her for a long time back then. In the end, the old homeroom teacher could not bear it anymore. He smacked the back of my head. You brat. What are you worrying about? Hey, what was I worried about? I was worried that an underachiever like me wasn't good enough for her. I was worried I'd hold back her academic ambitions. I was worried Jia and Ningxi would end up with postpartum depression again. I rambled on and on until I finished. The old homeroom teacher smacked my head again. It hit me so hard I saw stars. Who would be with someone without having worries like this? If you were with her, would you hurt her? No. I looked up at Jia and Ningxi, who was slowly walking toward me. It felt like something in my head had snapped awake. I pushed the old homeroom teacher aside and rushed up to Jia and Ningxi. I couldn't wait to hear her answer. Jia and Ningxi, do you want to get married? Jia and Ningxi's cheeks flushed red in an instant. She looked gorgeous. Her lips moved hesitantly. I guess I do. I panicked at once. Have you thought about it? What if he treats you badly? What if he bullies you? What if you get pregnant and feel miserable? Jia and Ningxi's eyes darted around, then secretly turned her head and glanced at the old homeroom teacher, who was making faces at her. Then she nodded worriedly and asked, Then, what do we do? Right, what do we do? I rubbed my hands together in a panic. The thought of Jia and Ningxi being bullied made me so angry I wanted to kill someone. Jia and Ningxi blinked slyly. She took my hand and said coaxingly, Then, would you ever do that to me? My instincts answered before my brain could decide. No, I answered without hesitation. It felt like something in my head straightened out at once. Looking at myself reflected in Jia and Ningxi's eyes, I begged her sincerely. Jia and Ningxi, if you ever get married in the future, if you want someone who will treat you well, could you consider me? After saying that, I immediately raised my hand to swear. I'll put your name on the property deed. It won't affect your PhD studies. Once your life settles down, we can think about having children. I swear, I'll stay by your side forever, and I won't let you suffer from postpartum depression. Before I could finish, Jia and Ningxi immediately blushed and covered my mouth with her hand. What are you talking about? You're already thinking about marriage and children. She shyly pouted and leaned close to my ear to whisper, If you want to get married, then start by being my boyfriend. I stared at the smile on Jia and Ningxi's lips, my heart pounding wildly. Only then did I hear the old homeroom teacher let out a relieved breath behind me. Oh, why are you crying from excitement? When Jia and Ningxi's hand touched my eyes, I finally realized that my tears had already betrayed me. I reached out and pulled my longed-for beloved into my arms. What happened after that was much the same as in my last life. Only this time, everything went far more smoothly. With my nearly kneeling promises, and with several houses as leverage, my lovely dear father-in-law was satisfied with me. But he still couldn't help glaring and huffing. If it were me, I would be the same. If someone tried to take my family's girl, I would definitely be even worse than he was. Jia and Ningxi still chose to marry me while she was in graduate school. She saw all my worries. When I kept tossing and turning, unable to sleep, she cradled my face and said to me gently, I love you, my beloved. Damn it, who could possibly resist that? Marry me. We have to get married. On my wedding day, the guests were basically the same as in my last life. On my side, because of that deadbeat father of mine, my relatives had long since cut all ties with us. We did not even have each other's contact information. So the guests there were basically our classmates and relatives from my dear father-in-law's side. All the classmates were shocked. No one had expected that Jia and Ningxi would end up falling for a loser like me. Even so, everyone still gave us their blessings. When Jia and Ningxi and I were toasting together, I unexpectedly saw the old homeroom teacher secretly wiping away tears. I was just about to go tease him a little when I saw her gulping down ice water. After she saw me, she sucked in a breath and said, Next time you make grilled sausage, could you put in less chili for me? I twitched at the corner of my mouth and nodded helplessly. Then I turned my head and saw Jia and Ningxi's best friend. Her mouth was stuffed full. She gave me a playful wink. After thinking for a moment, while massaging Jia and Ningxi's waist, I asked quietly, What kind of novels does your best friend write? Suspense. No wonder. I put my arm around Jia and Ningxi and stepped up to toast her with a full glass. Even though I took precautions, Ningxi still got pregnant successfully. It happened at exactly the same time as in my last life. I was still wondering about it when I caught the triumphant look in Ningxi's eyes. Fine. Guard against everything. But you can never guard against a thief in the house. Ningxi still, just like in my last life, insisted on having the child. My dear father-in-law and mother-in-law also took turns trying to persuade me. Sigh, as the child's father. Why do I look like the villain? No choice. But thankfully, ever since I married Ningxi, I had been preparing for this day. The factory had long since been moved to where Ningxi studied. Everything had already been arranged properly. I had basically become a hands-off owner. Instead, I spent all day studying recipes. I delivered meals to Ningxi right on time every day. I only found out by accident that their studio jokingly called me an ultra-devoted husband. What a title! A certificate would make it even better. I was terrified that if I let my guard down for even a moment, Ningxi would end up suffering from postpartum depression again, just like in my last life. She would even run to my father-in-law and mother-in-law's place to throw a tantrum and roll around on the floor. In the end, it was only because they thought I was embarrassing that they agreed to come live with us. I even secretly took their phones and kept muttering postpartum depression at the screen several times. Sure enough, big data really is something. That same day, they saw it while scrolling short videos, with the whole family's full attention. Ningxi smiled brightly every single day. And I mean truly sincerely. I added the psychologist from my last life on WeChat. Every day, I secretly shared Ningxi's condition with her. Fortunately, the doctor said everything was fine. Even after Ningxi gave birth, there was no situation like the one in my last life. Great. My beloved was doing just fine. Ningxi woke up in the delivery room. The moment she opened her eyes, she burst out laughing when she saw me. That scared me so much I kept reminding her to watch her wound. I was the one giving birth. Why are your eyes so red from crying? Ningxi gently stroked my swollen eyes. The moment she spoke, I could not stop myself from wanting to cry again. This life was the same as before. The issue with the starch sausage ingredients blew up everywhere. Fortunately, I had the experience from my last life. I made the factory's entire process from sourcing a product, processing, fully transparent, because the ingredients were clean. It actually became a minor hit. Oh, and that old bastard too. This time, after Ningxi gave birth, I stayed by her side 24 hours a day. Every day, she held our daughter and stayed cheerful. I never gave that old bastard a chance to get near Ningxi. Most importantly, I was unusually smart that year. After he stabbed me, I went to the hospital for an injury assessment. That old bastard had shown up once before. The moment he appeared, I slapped the injury report right in his face and threatened to call the police. That scared him so badly he never showed up again. I bought a bouquet of sunflowers from a flower shop. I did not expect that just as I stepped out of the flower shop, I ran into Ningxi holding our little girl and waving at me. Look, it's Daddy. Daddy bought us flowers. My eyes curved with a smile. I took our daughter from Ningxi's arms and held the sunflowers up in front of her. Come on, let's go home. I'll cook for you too. Bonus Chapter 2. I was sleeping while holding Ningxi in my arms. Half asleep, I suddenly felt her kiss me. What was that? I rubbed my head against her. I was sleepy as hell. Vaguely, I heard her whisper in my ear. In our last life, I'm sorry. You worked yourself to exhaustion, running between home and the factory. In my last life, everything. I gave a drowsy yawn and nudged closer to Ningxi. My face felt a little wet. It was not hard. You were just sick. Ningxi's eyes burned with tears, looking at the beloved man sleeping soundly in front of her. She could not help giving him a light slap on the face. This idiot. At the start of this life, he even wanted to stay far away from her. Luckily, she had good taste. She kept clinging to him, then never let go. Thinking back on what happened in the last life, Ningxi could not sleep. She carefully crawled out from under the covers and tucked the blanket back over him. Sitting by the bed, she turned on her phone, looking at the photos they had taken at the amusement park back then. There was a masked bear in the corner of almost every single one. Ningxi flipped through the photos. As she smiled and smiled, suddenly she was laughing through tears. Her fingers stopped on the last photo. From the overhead angle, the masked bear on it had awkwardly made a heart with its hands. This fool. No wonder she still liked this guy in this life. The person beside her turned over, reached out and felt around beside him, and called to her groggily. Wife, I'm here. I went to the bathroom, then hurried back, listening to his sleepy mumbling. Ningxi smiled and wiped away her tears. When she put down the phone, she suddenly noticed a sheet of paper peeking out from a half-open drawer. It was wedged between the books. Ningxi instinctively reached out and pulled it free. She shone a flashlight on it. Ningxi was even less sleepy now. It said, Moon Project. Step 1. Drop out of school and stay far away from Ningxi. Step 2. Start a business early. When he got to Step 3, there was only a dot after it. It was obvious this fool could not think of anything else. Sigh. He was never good at studying in school, so no wonder. The paper he used for the plan was just a sheet torn from a test paper. The handwriting on it was as messy as a dog's crawl. Ningxi shook her head and smiled. She put everything back where it belonged and slipped back under the covers. I barely opened my eyes a sliver. Curled up and nudged forward a little more. With a big hand reaching out, I pulled my beloved into my arms. I finally remembered what the third step of the Moon Project was. That was the moon in my arms. Ningxi bonus chapter. I suddenly remembered. My beloved had been reborn. I sat up in bed and immediately slapped him. This idiot. Luckily, in this life he was still my husband. I gave Muchen a light slap on the face. He smacked his lips a few times, scratched at his face without waking up, looking utterly silly, but still very handsome. It's the kind of look I love. I looked at the face that had stayed by my side since our last life. Tears slowly welled in my eyes. At this point in our last life, Muchen had a hard time. I had just given birth and was recovering at home. The negative reports about starch sausages broke online. That dealt Muchen's sausage processing factory a heavy blow. Every day he was run ragged. He racked his brains trying to find a way out. But at that very time, I developed postpartum depression, a mental illness. I had lived such a smooth life. I had never imagined that something like this would happen to me. Because Muchen was very good to me. Very, very good. Before he made a name for himself. When he was selling starch sausages at the square, he would buy me a bouquet of flowers every single day, without fail. Back then, the fragrance of chilies and the scent of flowers filled our entire relationship. Thinking about all that, I lifted my hand and lowered my head to sniff it. In my palm, besides the pleasant smell of baby formula, there was only the lingering scent of flowers. Even now, even after we married and had a child, he still buys me a bouquet of flowers every day. Cooking, housework, taking care of the child. He almost handles it all. He never lets me worry about a thing. An outsider would probably find it hard to imagine. A tall grown man wearing my clothes, to baby bottles hanging from his chest, rocking the child with such a ridiculous look. But that was exactly what Muchen did. Because he thought his wife, Ningxi, should not be bound by these things. He thought his wife should keep working toward her doctorate, should keep doing academic research, should keep shining at alumni gatherings and every kind of research forum. She should keep being the kind of person whose name alone made people think of excellence, would automatically be linked with excellence. Muchen always felt guilty toward Ningxi. Guilty that he had kept Ningxi trapped at home. That guilt only grew after he found out I had postpartum depression. So in this life, that fool kept trying to stay far away from me, unlike in our last life, when he used to cling to me like glue, because he thought, if it were not for him, I would not have postpartum depression in this life, and I would not have suffered. But Muchen was too good. He was really, really too good to Ningxi. In this life, that fool secretly did a lot for Ningxi, without her ever knowing. He snatched her wallet from a bunch of punks, then secretly dropped it on the road home, and walked away alone. Luckily, my dad called the police, and only then did the CCTV footage reveal who that brave hero was. But the footage was too dark back then, and by that time Muchen and I had already missed each other. For a moment, I did not recognize who it was. Then the memories in my head slowly came back to life. The haggard Muchen from my last life and the Muchen lying here now, with drool at the corner of his mouth by my side, overlapped. Mental illness is subtle and insidious. In my last life, no matter what, I could not admit that I had postpartum depression. I only looked at my bloated reflection in the mirror, and for a while I could not accept it. I just did not know how to care for a child very well. I just kept wanting to cry for no reason. I just could not stop myself from yelling at other people. I just heard my child's crying and I could no longer make sense of the words in my hands. It was just that the factory at home had run into trouble, and I could not help at all. I was just just miserable. It was not until I saw Mu Chen running back and forth between both sides, yet still forcing himself to stay strong and take care of the child, pretending nothing was wrong. That one night, the child's crying woke me up. But Mu Chen was not beside me. After I soothed the child, I quietly walked into the living room and found Mu Chen groveling on the phone, constantly flattering the person on the other end. My tears could not be held back anymore. After Mu Chen noticed, hung up, and came over to comfort me, that was when I finally understood. Ningxi, you're sick. Stop pretending. You're sick? But how could I be sick? How could I get sick at a time like this? How could I be so sensitive? I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just don't feel well. I just feel sick here. I beat at my heavy chest. I felt the world spin. I'm sorry, my love. I've burdened you. But Mu Chen only held me tightly, hiding me inside his coat, shielding my vulnerability, and not letting me see the tears sliding from the corner of his eyes. It's okay, Ningxi. You're just sick. It's okay. Who would have thought that Ningxi, who looked so capable to everyone else, would actually be afraid of something as small as a mental illness? But Mu Chen would only tell her, it's okay. Just like in our last life, when my dad broke his leg and needed a lot of money for treatment, Mu Chen only took every bit of usable money from his pockets and transferred it to my phone, then said with a soft smile, Ningxi, it's okay. I'm here. Thinking of all that, I was even less sleepy. I quietly climbed out of bed, casually tucking the blanket around Mu Chen, then sat by the bed and turned on my phone. I looked at the photos my best friend and I had taken at the amusement park. Almost every photo had a bear mascot hidden in the corner. I flipped through them one by one, smiling and smiling, until I suddenly laughed through tears. My finger stopped on the last photo. It showed me sitting on the Ferris wheel, shot from above. The bear in the photo was bundled up in a heavy costume, clumsily making a heart at me. The one inside that mascot costume was my love. In this life, even though he had resolved to stay away from Ningxi, he still tried every possible way to hide himself, just to make me happy. Mu Chen, this is my love. My clumsy love. This fool. No wonder that even in this life, even though I hardly crossed paths with Mu Chen, Ningxi would still end up falling for this guy. I lifted a hand to wipe away the cold tears on my face, but the more I wiped, the more tears came. Mu Chen beside me shifted his hand, reaching toward the side, and sleepily called out to me, Wife. I turned off my phone and hurriedly answered, I'm here. I went to the bathroom. Oh, then hurry back. Hearing his sleep talking, I smiled and wiped away my tears. When I put the phone down, I suddenly noticed a sheet of paper poking out from the bedside table. It was wedged between some books. The book was a cookbook. The edges of the pages were yellowed from years of handling. No wonder Mu Chen's cooking was so much better this life than in the last. So this was the power of knowledge. If this guy had had that kind of skill and determination when he was in school, he would never have had to worry about getting into college. I reached out instinctively and pulled out the thin sheet that looked so out of place. I shone my phone flashlight on it, and when I saw the writing on it, I was even less able to sleep. It said, Step 1 of the Moon Project, drop out of school and stay away from Ningxi. Step 2, start a business early. When he got to Step 3, he only scribbled a dot. It was obvious this fool had racked his brains and still could not come up with anything. Sigh. Blame him. He was never any good at studying when he was in school. No wonder the paper he used to write this plan on was still a math test paper he had torn off at random. The handwriting on it was obviously his. The handwriting looked like a dog's scribbles. I laughed through my tears. I put everything back where it belonged. Then I burrowed back into the warm blankets. Mu Chen beside me crackled, his eyes open a sliver in a daze. He was still half asleep. He curled up and nudged forward again. No wonder my dad used to think I was a cabbage that had been snatched up by a pig. Seeing it that way, it really was a perfect fit. I looked at the sleepy pig in front of me and smiled. I copied him and nuzzled into his arms. My love stretched out a big arm and pulled me into his embrace. Night fell softly. The stars faded one by one. Mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas all sank into sleep. I don't know if it was because I had been thinking about our last life, but I slept unusually soundly last night. When I opened my eyes early this morning, I heard the whirring sound of wheels right away. After a quick wash-up, I walked out of the room with a bright smile. The little girl was expertly riding her baby walker, and with a flashy fishtail she rolled right up to me. She held out her arms to me, asking for a hug. Once she saw me pick up the child, Muchen, with a steamed bun in his mouth, finally had a moment to wipe the sweat from his forehead. Ever since the little girl learned how to handle that baby walker, she had been a non-stop handful every day. The whole house felt like a sports car had roared through it. I sat at the dining table holding the little girl, and couldn't help kissing her sweet, soft cheek. This life, Muchen was terrified I would get postpartum depression, so he didn't want me to get pregnant. But I didn't give him what he wanted. Just like in our last life, I still got pregnant during that same period. Come on, girl, give her to me. You eat your meal. My dad, without another word, took the little girl, who was curling her fingers in, right out of my arms. He pressed his forehead to hers and played that little lift her up game with her. The old man and the little one were laughing and giggling together over there. This life, Muchen brought my parents home to live with us. The little girl was basically raised by them, by the two elders and Muchen. Mom, hurry and eat. And Dad, give me the girl. You should sit down too. Muchen wiped his greasy fingers, then took the little girl from my dad's hands. My dad looked at the father-daughter pair fooling around on the sofa, and grinned so wide his mouth looked ready to stretch to the back of his ears. Back then, when he found out Muchen hadn't even gotten into college, he wanted nothing more than to pry open my skull and see what on earth was in it. Whenever he thought of his promising daughter being taken by some brat of a boy, he got so angry he could hardly breathe. Every time he saw Muchen, he would glare and blow up at him. But Muchen was a pretty oblivious guy. Every time my dad threw obvious digs at him, he never caught on. He would even happily lean right in, driving my dad so mad his mustache was practically bristling. I really changed my mind about Muchen after I got together with him. My dad went and bought several boxes of grilled sausage home. Not to eat the sausage, but for the box itself. Hey, that's strange. Why don't these boxes have the winning ticket in them? He scratched at his sparse crown and turned the cardboard boxes in his hands over and over, afraid he might miss something. That year, my dad broke his leg at a construction site, and getting it fixed would cost a fortune. I was still in school then. My dad was a stubborn man. He flat refused to spend that money on himself. I even took time off from school for it. During that stretch of time, I felt like the sky had fallen in. My best friend, who was on leave from school, took me out to clear my head. We went to feed the dogs under the overpass. The dog beds there were thick and warm. They were all piled together out of clothes. I had no idea which kind soul had donated all those clothes. I was really distracted at the time. I kept thinking about student loans. But then, unexpectedly, the next day, things suddenly turned around. It all started when old homeroom teacher unexpectedly showed up at my house carrying the boxes of grilled sausage to visit. Maybe it was because he was getting older, but he always got tongue-tied when he spoke, stammering all the while. He also kept drinking water. He finished off the whole pot of water on the coffee table. After that, I finally made out the gist of what he was saying. Basically, the factory behind this brand had recently been running a promotional giveaway. There was a chance to win a huge cash prize. He wiped the sweat from his face. He said he was lucky enough to win a few thousand. After old homeroom teacher left, my dad, leaning on his crutch, watched him warily downstairs. Has this kind of scam even infiltrated the teaching staff now? My dad shook his head, sighing over and over. He didn't take old homeroom teacher's words seriously. It was really uncanny. The moment old homeroom teacher left, my mom casually opened those two boxes of grilled sausage right after him. The first thing she saw was the glaring big print, "You won." The words were handwritten. The handwriting looked like a dog's scribbles, but the color-printed voucher underneath looked much more authentic. This brand of grilled sausage was produced by one of the more famous factories near us. And really, because the amount printed on it could solve an urgent problem right away, I called with the mindset of giving it a try. After only a few questions, they told me to go to the Public Security Bureau to handle the paperwork. Within just over 10 minutes, a sum of money had been deposited into my dad's card. Money from a legitimate source. My dad gripped the bank card and immediately tossed away his crutch. Then he excitedly dragged my mom and me in the car to a temple to pray. If it hadn't been for the injury in his leg, he would have definitely gone vegetarian and given up meat to show his sincerity. He practically turned a staunch materialist into a devout believer. This stroke of luck Made my dad, every so often, go buy the boxes of grilled sausage again, to see whether he'd get lucky again. Too bad. Nothing else ever fell from the sky. Later, if old homeroom teacher hadn't slipped up in front of me, I never would have known this had anything to do with Muchen. That fool had exhausted himself worrying about Ji and Ningxi in this life. It was amazing he could come up with a scheme like that. No wonder after that my dad never again found a winning coupon inside the box when he went rummaging through it. Because of this, that Muchen, who often sat in the corner of the classroom and was talked about by all the girls, showed up in Ji and Ningxi's line of sight again. During those tense, repressive high school days, Muchen was the odd one out among those good students. I would, more or less, always cast curious glances at him. This life, although Muchen didn't cling to me like he did in our last life, and instead dropped out early, this incident still brought the Muchen from our high school days back into my mind. Back then, all I could think was, Muchen and I didn't have much overlap. So, why would he do that? Why? Curiosity is often the beginning of a bond. After Muchen and I got together, he never brought it up on his own. Because my dad didn't know. The so-called winning ticket had been planned by Muchen from the start. Back then, it was really because I couldn't stand eating grilled sausage 3 meals a day anymore. So I secretly let my dad know the truth. My dad scratched his chin. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something. He curled his lip in disgust. No wonder the handwriting on that note looked like a dog's breakfast. Even now, I still remember it clearly. That look on his face, like the sky had fallen in. What? This all came from that brat's factory? I bought so many boxes of grilled sausage from him. Listening to my dad's roar, I couldn't help pinching the bridge of my nose. Why was he acting like he was the one who'd been wronged? After that, my dad's attitude toward Muchen improved a lot. Now anyone could see it. He was liking the son-in-law more and more. Aside from being a little clumsy, Muchen really didn't have any other flaws. When he saw me looking over, Muchen, who had been making faces, immediately came over carrying our little girl in his arms. He smelled even stronger of milk powder than I did. I'm done eating. Let's go. I set down my bowl and chopsticks. I simply tied my hair up. On the way, I pinched our little girl's soft cheek. Muchen handed the child to my dad, then naturally picked up the laptop bag on the coffee table for me. I took Muchen's outstretched hand and stood with him at the door. We waved goodbye to the little girl, who was tugging at Grandpa's beard. Sweet girl, Mom and Dad are leaving now. Bye-bye. Muchen tilted his head and held my hand, swinging it back and forth. What a kid. I smiled faintly and tilted my head too, waving like a lucky cat. Oh my. The little girl stuck out her tongue and shouted at us. Bye-bye, Dad and Mom. The moment we opened the door and stepped outside, a fresh, slightly cool breeze hit us in the face. Looking up at the sky, I saw a brilliant sun slowly rising. Its light cut through the thin mist, draping everything in a soft golden sheen. In my last life, Muchen stayed by my side while I received treatment. Back then, when I looked at the sunlight, I only felt ashamed. It was as if I'd spent my whole life studying. And at that moment, none of it seemed useful at all. I couldn't help Muchen at all, and I couldn't ease the pain in my own heart. Muchen was run ragged dealing with the factory, then my illness. The stubble on his face kept growing thicker. Even his clothes started to hang loose on him. But whenever he looked at me, the guilt in his eyes only deepened. But why? Muchen, why do you feel guilty? You've been so good to me. What on earth did you do wrong? Muchen was always full of guilt when it came to Ji and Ningxi. He felt guilty that someone with only a high school education like him had married someone as outstanding as Ji and Ningxi. He felt guilty that his carelessness had made Ji and Ningxi sick. Muchen was exactly that kind of idiot. A complete idiot. He took all the blame onto himself. But what that fool didn't know was, Ji and Ningxi was nowhere near as perfect as he imagined. As for me, I only knew how to bury myself in books. I didn't even know much basic practical life knowledge. I couldn't make money. And I certainly didn't know how to be a mother. Muchen, you were the pillar of my life. I was never the bright moon in his heart. And I never once thought he had allowed a pearl to gather dust. Muchen beside me rubbed my hands warm. Then he smiled and asked, Wife, are you cold? Golden sunlight draped this ordinary day. Draped the day in a dreamy veil. And amid all that brilliance, I could only see the one I loved standing, where light and shadow met. Sunlight just happened to slide from the tips of his hair, tracing his outline with a soft gold edge. My other hand covered the back of Mu Chen's hand, and I gently shook my head at him. Really? Why do I feel like your hand is a little cold? Mu Chen frowned. He lifted my hand. Then, like a big dog, he blew warm breath into my palm. It made my hand tingle, and my heart itch too. My darling, you're so good to me. I took the laptop from him. I sat in the passenger seat, looking over the materials the advisor had sent me, and waited for Mu Chen to drive. Beside us was Mu Chen's beloved bike. It was covered with whereupon flowers. He had learned to make them by hand himself. Our family's scarves, and the flower decorations on the little girl's clothes, were all made by Mu Chen's own hands. Sometimes I couldn't help wondering how this guy seemed to be good at everything, except studying. Ever since marrying me, Mu Chen had stopped going out to run his stall and personally checking the market. This beloved bike had been with him since he started his business. Sometimes Mu Chen took such good care of it that I got a little jealous. Wife, what do you want to eat tonight? I looked at the dense stack of documents on the laptop and couldn't help getting a headache. I turned my head and habitually started acting spoiled with Mu Chen. Oh, I have an experiment today, so I probably won't be back for dinner. Mu Chen pouted, looking just as pitiful. Ah, poor us, this miserable little pair of lovebirds, separated by damned academia. Then I'll bring it to you tonight. Do you want fish? Mu Chen rattled off the menu with practiced ease. I listened for a bit and picked a few at random. The car stopped at the school gate. I unbuckled my seatbelt. Then, as usual, kissed him on the cheek. Mu Chen exaggeratedly clutched his forehead. A knockout blow first thing in the morning. A senior from the lab happened to pass by and froze with his raised hand halfway up, ready to say hello. He had just been force-fed a mouthful of our sweet nonsense. His whole face twisted like a bitter melon. I shrugged at him with no apology at all. Sorry. Mu Chen rolled down the window, grinning broadly as he greeted the senior. I turned back. The sun was blinding. It was as if Mu Chen had sunlight hidden in his eyes too, glowing with warm, bright light. Our eyes met. The corners of Mu Chen's mouth lifted slightly, and his smile grew even brighter. I waved goodbye to him, then hurried all the way to the lab. I opened the computer, looked at the data on the screen, and tightened the hair tie at the back of my head. I threw myself into it completely. If the senior hadn't tapped my desk, I still wouldn't have realized it was already noon. The senior was chewing a sandwich and said sourly, "Your man is here with lunch." Wow. I changed my clothes, and when I went downstairs, I saw Mu Chen carrying lunch while holding the lunch box and smiling at me. Why didn't you text me? If the senior hadn't reminded me, I wouldn't have known how long you'd been waiting here. Mu Chen grinned and took my hand, looking utterly unconcerned. I figured you must be busy. Waiting for my wife, of course. What does it matter if I wait a little? As he spoke, Mu Chen leaned in to nuzzle me with his head, his fluffy hair tickling my face. Honestly, this guy had no shame at all. Did he think we were at home? I pretended to be disgusted and pushed him away, while my other hand went to tickle him. Ugh, that was another critical hit. After thinking it over, I decided to go to the cafeteria for something hot. The senior just happened to see the scene and clutched his chest again, standing there with the same bitter melon expression. He looked like he'd turned to stone. Mu Chen scratched his head. He asked with a grin, "Senior, are you waiting for someone here too? When did you get a girlfriend? How come I never knew?" As the senior's expression grew more and more shattered, I immediately reached out and covered Mu Chen's chatterbox mouth. Then I hurriedly dragged him away from the scene. Luckily, you don't hit a smiling face. Otherwise, this guy would be done for. The senior doesn't have a girlfriend. Don't talk nonsense. The moment I let my hand drop, Mu Chen turned back in frustration. The senior's that age and he's still single? That loudmouth. I quickly clamped my hand over his mouth again. Behind us, the senior went upstairs with a lonely back view, but he still didn't forget to flip us off behind his back. As usual, we found an empty seat in the cafeteria and sat down. I opened the lunchbox. The smell was mouth-watering. Mu Chen held up his phone and video called my dad. On the other side, the little girl hugged her bottle. She watched the mukbang on my side of the screen. Every time, the little girl would start crying for some too. Then my dad would start drooling on the other side of the screen. Yo, finish eating? The senior held up his middle finger and stared at me coolly. I clasped my hands together and gave him an apologetic smile. The senior rolled his eyes at me. Then he went back to the experimental data and said without looking up, "Apologies don't help. This experiment's reimbursement hasn't come through yet. Have your man help out more." The other seniors and grad students immediately chimed in. I shrugged with a smile. When I got back, I told Mu-chen about it. He nodded without even thinking and agreed. Then he stroked his chin. While shaking the formula came with the other. He said thoughtfully, I feel like I'm practically part of your project team now. I nodded in agreement while changing the little girl's diaper. Don't worry. You'll be in the thesis acknowledgments. Just one acknowledgement was enough to make him ecstatic. He was thrilled to bits. He quickly picked up the little girl, bare-bottomed and all, and lifted her high into the air. Oh ho! Thanks to your mom. Your old man has finally stepped into research. The little girl giggled nonstop in the air. My dad came out of the kitchen, took one look, and immediately kicked Mu-chen in the backside. I held the diaper in my hand, watching him grimace as he rubbed his butt. Thanks to Mu-chen, Ningxi had a little less suffering in this life. She was just as happy as she had been in her previous life. Finally, I had some free time on the weekend. For a moment, it felt a little strange, because once you step into research, you end up buried in work day and night. There aren't weekends anymore. It was rare to have time to spare. Mu-chen and I took the little girl to the amusement park. Mu-chen went to find a place to park. I bought a balloon. Then I tied it to the little girl's stroller. The little thing was thrilled to bits. She kept rising onto her tiptoes and twisting around to look at the balloon. Feeling the bustle again after so long made me happy too. I picked up the little girl and teased her with the balloon while waiting for Mu-chen there. Wow. It was the little girl's first time here, and she found everything unbelievably novel. She kept twisting this way and that. Luckily, she was still small, or I probably wouldn't have been able to hold her. Yiqiang. A sharp voice rang in my ears, making every hair on my body stand on end. That was Mu-chen's former name. Mu-chen rarely talked to me about his past, but from the little he said, I could still picture the life he had lived. He had a hard life back then. His mother left early. His father was a deadbeat. He borrowed money from every relative he could and never paid a cent back. That left the whole family despised by all their relatives. Mu-chen had never been good at school, but maybe it was sheer stubbornness, because he still wanted to finish school. But how could that deadbeat father possibly pay his tuition? So, Mu-chen could only go straight to work after class, washing dishes and taking odd jobs, because he wasn't even an adult yet. It was already lucky that he could find work at all. His pay was lower than everyone else's too, and even then, part of what he earned still went into his father's pocket. The old bastard took it and spent it on liquor. Even the name Yiqiang came from that shameful father, who was drunk out of his mind when he registered him. The clerk couldn't stand it and picked the name for him. The new name, Mu-chen, was something he asked me to give him after we made our relationship official in my previous life. He begged me to choose it. He said I was good with books and wanted me to give him a meaningful name. Back then, I didn't understand why he wanted to throw away the names his parents had given him. Mu-chen came from the line, tides gather, sorrow lingers, parting is bitter, because it was tied to my name. I had known that verse since I was little. That name was just something I blurted out to tease him with. He always bragged that whatever was in my heart, he could guess it without trying. He said he didn't even need to guess. So I named him Mu-chen. He loved that name. He loved it so much that he held me and cried. Back then, Ningxi still didn't know about his past struggle in the mud and mire, so all she could do was hug him back, not understanding why. I often called him Mu-chen. After a long time, I heard the name Yiqiang again, and only felt dazed. I held the little girl and looked over. It really was Mu-chen's father. Just like in my previous life, he was marching straight toward me, full of menace. His gaze flickered uncertainly. After making sure Mu-chen wasn't beside me, he clearly relaxed. Mu-chen often mocked himself for being trash. Trash? What trash? How could Mu-chen be trash? He was nothing of the sort. My beloved, he had never been trash. He had always been struggling to move forward. I studied the middle-aged man in silence, wanting to see for myself the man who had ignored Mu-chen and created the suffering in the first half of his life, to see what this biological father actually looked like. In my previous life, he came looking for me too. At that time, my postpartum depression was under good control, and I had come out alone with the little girl for a walk and some fresh air. Mu-chen's biological father had heard that his factory was in trouble, so he came to me. He wanted to squeeze out a sum of money before the factory went under. I looked at the old man in front of me. His eyes stayed on the little girl for only half a second, before darting away. Then, just like in my previous life, he put on a one-man performance and flung himself to the ground. Then he started screaming and kicking up a scene. Every word out of his mouth accused Mu Chen of abandoning and neglecting him. Soon, a crowd gathered around us. People who didn't know the truth were fooled by the man on the ground, a ragged old beggar of a man, especially once he mentioned that Mu Chen was a boss. The people around us took it as fact. They started pointing and whispering at us. The old man on the ground shrieked, ranting and rolling around, easily scaring the little girl into tears. In my previous life, when I ran into something like this, because of postpartum depression, I could only keep soothing the little girl, feeling completely helpless. The pointing and whispering around me, together with the buzzing in my head, nearly drowned me out. But this time, I held the little girl in my arms, covering her ears. For the first time, I clearly saw the greedy, shameless face of the old man on the ground. I could almost picture him grabbing Mu Chen by the hem of his school pants and shake money out of him. Every time Mu Chen finished an odd job and came home on an empty stomach, this was the drunk father waiting for him, clutching his school uniform, cursing him as a piece of trash over and over again. I had always thought that the inferiority Mu Chen never talked about came from his biological father. So that bastard took my postpartum depression and all the blame for it onto himself. That was why, at the start of this life, he wanted to keep his distance from me. I looked at the old man on the ground, Mu Chen's biological father, and all I wanted was to ask him why. Why would he treat Mu Chen like this? Why would he choose to be such a father? Why would someone as good as Mu Chen have such a deadbeat father? Ningxi. Mu Chen's anxious voice snapped me back to reality. I looked up and saw his eyes red as he pushed through the crowd. He shoved through the people, just like in my previous life. He forced his way through the crush and pulled me and the little girl into his arms. Seeing her father arrive, the little girl immediately puckered her lips and cried even louder. She stretched out her arms, wanting Mu Chen to hold her. For the first time, Mu Chen refused her. He patted the little girl's head and gathered me into his arms. Then, in a trembling voice, he said, "Wife, take the little girl and go rest for a while. I'll handle this." I nodded. The crowd automatically made room for us. People always sympathize with the weak. The ragged old man on the ground was one of the weak, too. And so were we, this mother and daughter. I turned back. The old man on the ground clearly hadn't expected to run into Mu Chen, but the fear on his face vanished the moment he saw the dense crowd around him and completely melted away. He immediately slipped back into his evasive act. Mu Chen stood in the middle of the crowd with both fists clenched at his sides. He was standing in the crowd, his back bent and hunched. I held back my tears and covered the little girl's eyes. I didn't let her see her father's vulnerable side. I held the little girl and sat in the milk tea shop for a long time. I quietly stared at the Ferris wheel turning slowly in the sky. It spun round and round overhead. In my previous life, Mu Chen and I confirmed our feelings on the Ferris wheel. This life, Mu Chen, that rascal, was down below dressed as a mascot, just to make me laugh. Ferris wheel, oh Ferris wheel, please carry away my beloved's sorrow. Ferris wheel, oh Ferris wheel, please let my beloved be a little happier in this life. This life. I happened to realize the mascot was Mu Chen in disguise. I wanted to talk to him, but the guy slipped away the moment he saw the chance. He was in such a hurry that he even bumped into my best friend. Watching his panicked back, I suddenly realized that this was the person I had seen on the security footage. So Mu Chen was the one who had helped me get my wallet back. The good man who left without giving his name. Later, my best friend dragged me into a long analysis session. That was when I realized this guy like me, that rascal Mu Chen, had carved his mark into my heart in this life. Seeing Mu Chen, the little girl immediately stretched out her arms for Daddy to hold her. Mu Chen had a lot more dust on him, and his hair was a little messier. But all in all, he was much better than he had been at that time in my previous life. Everyone around who looked at Mu Chen was shaking their heads and sighing. What were they sighing over? Were they pitying Mu Chen? But Mu Chen had never needed anyone's pity on his road here. He had fought his way here step by step. Mu Chen lowered his head, his thumb tracing line after line across his index finger. After a moment, he looked up with the same guilty expression he had worn in my previous life. "Wife, I'm sorry. No need to apologize." I cut him off right away. Then I rubbed the little girl's head, looked him straight in the eye, and said the words I had wanted to say in both my lives. "Husband, you've worked hard. Thank you, my love. Thank you for fighting your way out of the mire. Thank you for being so good to us." Mu Chen looked into my eyes. Tears spilled from his eyes. He covered his face, bringing an end to the sorrow of both his lives. I didn't know how Mu Chen handled it, but after that day, I never saw his father again. Just like in my previous life, Mu Chen protected us very well. We only saw him once. Things at the lab went on as usual. Mu Chen came to deliver meals on time every day. It was basically a straight line between the factory, school, and home. I watched my parents cooking in the kitchen. I checked the time, then went out carrying the little girl. We were going to pick up Mu Chen from the factory. Baby, let's go. Let's go pick Daddy up and bring him home. When we got there, I saw Mu Chen. Before I even had a chance to greet him, I saw him turn and head into the flower shop. We were regulars. We had ordered the flowers for our wedding from here. The florist owner saw me and shot me a teasing, knowing look. Mu Chen walked out of the flower shop with a bouquet of sunflowers in one hand and a potted cactus in the other. Who would have thought? My dad had casually mentioned once that cacti help absorb radiation and are good for children, and he had remembered it, seeing us standing at the door. Mu Chen's eyes were full of warmth and delight. His smile was as bright as a sunflower. The curve of his lips matched the curve of the flowers in his hands. I lifted the little girl's chubby little paw and waved at him like a beckoning cat. Look, it's Daddy. Daddy bought flowers for us. The little girl happily stuck out her tongue and immediately burrowed into Mu Chen's arms. Mu Chen lowered his head and looked at the sunflower in his hands, then handed it to me. The golden petals shone brilliantly in the dusk, even more dazzling and radiant, but they still could not outshine the man by my side. Come on, let's go home. I'll cook for you. Mu Chen's eyes curved with a smile as he wrapped his free arm around my waist. 2 lifetimes later, Mu Chen was still my husband. A bluebird eagerly carries my letter. My beloved was indeed still by my side. The end.